Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss the Chronicles of Riddick, starring Vin Diesel, Colm Feore, Tandy Newton, Carl Urban, Alexa Davalos, and Judi Dench, directed by David Twohy. Now, this is the first Riddick movie that I saw in theaters, but I don't remember understanding what the hell was going on in that movie. Was it as good or bad as or was it as bad as what people say it is? Let's get into it and we'll see. We open with a really bad monologue about an army of the Underverse called the Necromancers, led by the Lord Marshal, played by Colm Feore, who is half alive and half something else, which didn't tell me what it was, which felt very irritating. Richard Bruno Riddick, returned by Vin Diesel, is a wanted man who almost gets captured by Toombs, and Riddick goes in his ship while Toombs goes after him and throws his bad guys off the ship, as well as Toombs himself, after he's made 3 mistakes, and sends him back to Helium Prime, while Riddick goes to a different planet called, well, I guess it was Riddick that went to Helium Prime. And do I need these scenes? Absolutely not. One way to improve this opening scene is telling the audience what happened to the characters, which does become the case in the unrated version, when Jack gets put in a cage. As we learned last time, Jack was a female, which felt muddled then, and it felt muddled in this unrated scene. And Riddick visits Imam, returned by Keith David, and I guess it's been 5 years since the events of Pitch Black, as Imam is married with a daughter named Ziza. And this whole backstory of Jack versus Iman didn't make sense, as this movie makes absolutely no sense. And I don't like Riddick this time as well as the other characters this time. Whereas Riddick was adequate in the last film, and Jack is going to change her name later in the film, but I'll get there when I get there. After the visit with Imam, Riddick meets Arion, played by Judi Dench, who's like the Lord Marshal, who's the movie's bad guy, as well as a couple of others I'll bring up later. And the special effects look awful in here. Riddick fights some of Lord Marshal's men, and we get some flashing lights during that fight, which just gave me a headache to the point. I can't understand what the hell was going on in that fight scene. Riddick leaves Imam and his family on his way to stop the Lord Marshal from ever invading Helium Prime. And they turn off the lights and finds Riddick that way. And this plot makes no sense. And the choices being made in this movie made no sense either. That hell, I can't even make sense of this damn thing. As well as the invasion, or why does the Lord Marshal want it? And I don't know, and I don't care. We get introduced to Vaco, played by Carl Urban, serving the Lord Marshal along with his wife Dame Vaco, played by Tandy Newton, as they have a meeting with the civilians, as the Lord Marshal could be at various spots at once, as well as taking people's souls, while Riddick happens to be there, and the Lord Marshal says bow to him, as Riddick bows to no man, even to the Lord Marshal, and kills someone 10 times his size, and kills him clean, while he tests a knife, and Dame Vaco takes Riddick to a place where he gets caged by force until eventually he breaks out. And as a villain, the Lord Marshal is tedious. And the rest of the scenes I just talked about is just painful to watch. Toombs picks up Riddick with 5 others and takes him to prison in a planet that, for the life of me, I can't pronounce the name of it. And Diesel's one-liners, as well as his acting, really got on my nerves after a while. Dame Vaco torments Vaco about Riddick, how the Lord Marshal thinks. In the unrated version, Vaco slaps his dame, and suddenly they kiss as they felt very weird. This felt very weird and inappropriate for an unrated version of a PG-13 rated movie. And they, afterhand, see Arion as has been captured by the Lord Marshal. And another scene that felt weird and inappropriate was the female crew member with Toombs smelling Riddick while he sits there asleep until he wakes up, and says she grinds her teeth when she sleeps, which is sexy in his opinion, I'll say. And that weirded me out to the point I was uncomfortable. Riddick arrives to the jail and is introduced to his jailmates, as well as he's reunited with Jack, or as she calls herself, Kira, played by Alexa Davalos, whom I reviewed a couple of times in The Mist and the Clash of the Titans remake, and she's just as terrible here as she was in those films, and in my opinion, she's a terrible actress in general. We fly in some green screen, bad looking special effects, and Vako is searching for Riddick while the dame asks for Arion where Riddick came from, in which she answers as Furia, while she's like a ghost, and when she cannot fall to her death, which does look strange, as that scene was strange. And let's just say it now, this movie is too long at almost 2 hours, but the unrated cut is 2 hours and 14 minutes, and for a silly action movie like this, it's too long. We get back to the prison, and it's feeding time as the prisoners get eaten by indestructible creatures that nothing can defeat them except for Kira and Riddick, who looks them in the eyes, and the creature knows not to kill Riddick, but Riddick treats it like a pet, which is convenient, while Kira beats up on the guards until Riddick says to get away from her, as she doesn't like being touched, and he kills one of the guards with a teacup, which did feel silly in my opinion, while Riddick grabs a key and explains to Kira he was trying to protect her for 5 years, but she didn't give a damn at this point. And the acting in the scene is terrible. Riddick tells the prison mate that there's an escape happening soon, and Kira overhears while Toombs chats with the warden of the prison and about his money, and the prisoners see there's an attack going on in the warden's office, and Riddick climbs up the rope, leaving Toombs behind, and attempts on an escape as Kira and other prisoners get out with him, and traps Toombs, which serves him right, and the sequence was annoying. Like, how many escape from prison movies have I seen in my life? As the answer is dozens, and it gets old real fast. Riddick, Kira, and others try to go in a shady spot away from the sun, because the sun will light them like they were matches, and these effects looked horrible, as the most of the prisoners do die except for Riddick and Kira, which is way too convenient that it doesn't work. They get attacked and play a game called Who's the Better Killer, and eventually Kira gets captured by Vako, while Riddick is about to be killed with a message from the Lord Marshal, but the light kills someone whom I'm thinking is his assistant of some kind, as his message is to stay away from Helium Prime, and he'll be a wanted man no more. But Riddick doesn't listen and goes back to Helium Prime, while Vako reports the news to Riddick's death, and is promoted not as Lord, but as assistant, as Lord Marshal will never let that happen, while Arion feels Riddick is alive and on the planet with Imam's family are hiding from the danger that's going to happen, while Riddick walks in and goes for Kira, and Vako gives Riddick a chance to kill the Lord Marshal, and before the fight begins, Riddick finds Kira is at first on the opposite side, and Riddick fights the Lord Marshal and gets his ass handed to him briefly until Vako almost kills him, but switches his position to where Riddick will stab him in the head to death, and he becomes the Lord of Marshal himself of Helium Prime. And this climax was dreadful to the point it made no sense, and I hope the next movie is better than this pile of crap, because we're back to R-rated Riddick compared to this PG-13 rating of a movie. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 2.9 out of 10. The plot makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, as even I can't make sense of this damn thing. It's the last time I liked Riddick adequately, whereas here I don't like him in this movie, as well as the other characters, as they came off stale. The special effects looked awful, as I couldn't follow the action scenes, as it was hard to follow, and this movie felt long, as this is too long for 2 hours, and the unrated cut that was 2 hours and 14 minutes, and it felt like a waste of time. The choices being made by the actors in this movie was unexplainable, and at the same time, I didn't care, as I didn't like this movie, and this is a solid non-recommendation, as well as the mini-movies following this series. but I still have one more movie to go, and I haven't seen it in a decade, so we'll see how this goes, because I don't remember this one very well. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Riddick, and until then, it's been a long time. Or no, wait, it's better yet. You're not afraid of the dark, are you?